Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I wanted to talk again. I've made several videos when I've had someone request that I go a little bit into William Bengston's method. Now, I've mentioned him consistently because he's one of the few people that has spent pretty much 30 years of most of his academia career studying this very interesting method, which he's written a book on called The Energy Cure. He also has 6 DVDs. These are audio DVDs that details his entire method and gives you his techniques. Now, I highly recommend that everyone goes out and buys these. They are available on Amazon, and you should support this person's research. One of the problems of just going and finding stuff and basically stealing it is that this hurts the entire industry. And the more money that Bengston has, the more time and energy and resources he can put into his method. So it's always very important to support legitimate, good people. And there are very few of these. He is one of them. Now, there is a kicker to all this, and we'll talk about that at the end of it. Now, this is a particular psychic method of healing, often called hands-on. You can, and here I've got on my Kindle here, I've got his website pulled up, and you can see Bengston Research. So to find out how to spell it, it's at bengstonresearch.com. Very easy to find. And of course, it shows you all the stuff. He has publications, he has interviews. There's a lot of information on him on YouTube as well. So you can, you don't have to read and to strain the eyes. You can listen to him and his method, and there's a lot of information there. And what's so interesting about him? Well, the bottom line is that he proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is energy called psychic, for a better term. I like the term biophysical because psychic has been trashed, particularly by the ignorant dumb bunkers and the stoogey religious people that think everything is evil because they're evil in their own hearts. So we have all these problems with that term, and I don't particularly like it. It's kind of an outdated term, and it becomes meaningless now with how it's been dragged around and used. And I even talked to one religious person who was so against that term that they didn't know how to spell psychic. Ha, Tammy the boob from Palm Desert, you corrupt person. So the whole idea is that from Assembly of God. So these are the kind of things you run into. So I think it's important to use proper terminology. I'm not sure what psychic means, just like the subconscious, another word which I will talk about in another lecture that we really need to trash. Coming from the Germanic Arab background from Freud and his mixed up garbage mind that has then perpetrated his fraud on the Western world. As of all the people coming from that particular horrible tradition of thinking and science and everything else. So that's another, of course, area that I've talked about before. But let's get into this. Why is this important? Well, basically, William Bengston has proven that there is an energy from just an unusual way of doing things, and as all of this kind of biophysical is, it's not a concentrated method. You don't focus like in a bad movie to produce some sort of biophysical or psychic wave of energy that then makes things happen. Generally, these things happen without that kind of force, which tends to turn the energy off. Another very strange reality. But so basically, by doing his unique type of focusing, which he's been doing for 30 years, using anybody he can find, and particularly people who are negative, who don't like this area, he's worked in a very structured way, getting permission to use mice and so forth, which he states is difficult to do now, typical suppression. Why that would be difficult, I have no idea, but he has done it in a very traditional way for 30 years now. He's broken through some interesting areas that don't make sense, but are interesting for research, which some other people have also verified. The fact that certain substances, like pure cotton, is a huge gatherer and holder of energy. Now, this again shows the non electrical nature of things. And we must understand that the arcane, stupid term that people use called radionics is very outdated when really it should be named, as I will start using from this point on, scalar onyx or scalar radionics, as most people don't know what scalar is or what it means. Radionics is a fairly well-known term now, with more and more books being written on it, and a term that most people have heard. So, to eliminate the word radionics is going to alienate. A matter of fact, I had one person contact me recently that said, "Well, I don't know what this scalar stuff is all about. I'll have to look into it." Well, that's the real term for radionics, which means a non electromagnetic field. Now, radionics has never ever been an electrical process, it has nothing to do with electricity. The original radionic tools, even made by Abrams, who some started off electric, and he never called it radionics, he called it the electric reaction of Abrams. But his instruments that he started selling and renting to thousands of doctors across the United States ultimately was non electric in nature. When the machines were opened up and looked at, and of course they were filled with black goop, so you really couldn't tell what's in there, another telltale sign of trying to hide something. They were all just gobbledygook nonsense that really didn't add up to anything. They were parts that you could get inexpensively from doorbells and other things that made no sense in any way, even in an alternative science way. So what happened there to give it credibility? And it's very important because if you build a unit, which they all are now, radionic units, which are made by, if you want to give them credit, the Radionic Association of England, and other companies have nothing in them. They are potentiometers and they are dials and they are wires and they do not plug in and they don't produce any energies of an electromagnetic nature. So when you talk about scalar, which is the correct term, which is now coming in use by many people, because they want to move away from the term radionics, because radionics is illegal as a medical practice. So if you do healing and you use radionics, it's illegal. This has been verified, and people have been put in prison for using radionics medically. The most famous one was Ruth Drown, etc. The other things we could say are scalar in nature, is things like orgone from Wilhelm Reich. Wilhelm Reich, of course, with his orgone, is a scalar energy. It's a non-electromagnetic. You don't plug it in, just like pyramids and so many other energies that are awesome powered. They do not work on the electromagnetic spectrum. A matter of fact, scalar energies create the electromagnetic spectrum. That's where that comes from. Now, this is something people don't understand. I'm going to be writing these in a series of books that I plan on writing in the coming year. So people understand this once and for all because it's very confusing, and people look at these pseudo-electric devices because they have dials on it and they have electric wires in them, but not really any radionic instrument that you could open. A lot of people look at these very complicated Bruce Copen instruments, and they are instruments. You have to learn how to play them. And there's nothing in them ultimately. He puts in a lot of electronics that are meaningless because the main tuning circuits are non-electric. And this goes back, of course, to Abrams, and then it was picked up by Ruth Drown, who her instruments were again non-electric that were used in mass. Now, there's many different electronic, or I should say, radionic type instruments which are now go back over 100 years, and some of them apparently were electric. Abrams apparently had something like an oscilloscope. There are people that are building units, calling them radionics, that put out frequencies, Maxwell frequencies that are out there that are measurable. So the whole idea is that often misnomered, called Hertzian, which is a made-up name by the boobs of science that we need to start moving away from. So as we have to understand that. So what is it? Well, if as the expert in the field and a person who's reached the highest level of human consciousness, if you're going to manufacture, which I've been doing for over 40 years now, if you're going to manufacture, use, teach, etc., a tool, you have to know what it works on. So if you're going to try and power your toaster by pouring water in it, you're going to find out that it doesn't work. So it's just ridiculous. And this is where we're at right now. We have a lot of the people in this particular industry, and of course in the world in general, seem to be people of the most lowest mentality. A lot of them are computer-based people thinking that somehow a computer program of dots and dashes put on a chip is somehow going to do something. This is ridiculous, and the number one writer on this, Peter Renetti, it has a background of computers, and interestingly enough has worked for the federal government. He has also stated illegal curing by using his machines while on the worst place you can get information from, the United States Psychotronic Association, which knows absolutely nothing and is ran by a high school gym teacher. This is the kind of quality this industry has. Computer programmers, which has absolutely nothing to do with scalar onics or radionics in general, but think it does. People who also, Peter Renetti credits people like the well-known Satanist Charles Casamano, who works closely with E.A. Kenneding and other Satanists. So, I mean, this is how filthy this industry is. But, what isn't? You go through every aspect of life, from medicine to military to law enforcement, to all the scientists who have sold out and who write fake papers. Apparently, the latest information is that the actual food industry bought off Harvard, so I hear. I don't know. It's hard to trace these things. Have bought off the Harvard scientists, and we know how dirty all these guys are. You can just look on YouTube of all the corruption in science, to demonize fat over sugar, when fat is really good for you and normal. But we've been all told this clogs your arteries and everything else. But what really hurts your body is sugar. So the whole idea is that they were bought off, and it's just as simple as that. And certainly the bogus science that we keep getting from so-called science is really frightening, because it's murdering people. It's for profit only. But what is new out there? Because that's what life is all about. So we need to understand that. We need to understand what we're dealing with. If you're going to manufacture, and I've come up with a whole new line of equipment, special wiring, that will actually pick up and amplify scalar type energies, non-electromagnetic type energies, in a very particular way, using tube-based electronics mostly, But what I've done is taken a lot of common electronics and transmute them, change them at a subatomic level. So the energy that enters these machines are then changed in the process there without physically going in and redoing it, which would become a nightmarish problem and cost millions. Life is about doing things at a proper price and making it affordable. Anybody can go out and build something from the ground up and spend hundreds of millions of dollars doing it. I shouldn't say anybody, but the people who generally do stuff like that are the kind of idiots like Elon Musk, who basically came up with the genius invention of an electric car. Ooh, that's new. So the whole idea is we have all this type of stuff, and that's just a dumb way of doing it. The smart way is to repurpose what's already available out there and use it for what you have. And quite frankly, I don't need to make things from the ground up, because repurposing and doing the system that I've been working on for 40 years works fantastic. I don't need to do that. And we can keep our prices down as well. Anybody can make something really expensive, but can you make something at a fair price that is high quality? That's the key to life, and that's doing things right and then making things available to everyone. So getting back into this system, so he's been doing this for 30 years. He's getting to be quite an old little character, William Bengston. And again, here's his page, and we can read this. Next frontier in healing, a non-invasive, because you're not injecting or doing anything. You're sending energy through your psychic powers. Information-based healing. The information is what you're sending. Develop and rigorously researched by William Bengston, PhD. And he's a accredited PhD. We can't hold that against him, from a bogus school, otherwise known as Ivy League. I mean, you generally are not taught anything from these schools, whether it's MIT, who's been caught in all sorts of fraud, whether it is Caltech, fraud, and everybody else. Stanford, fraud. Princeton, fraud. They've all got have a list, as long as your arm, of all the fraudulent research they've done, so they can just make money from it. It's really sad that these well-paid, highly respected, and protected people in these Ivy League and other prestigious institutions have to be so corrupt so they make more money. And of course, money is the only thing that counts. The lack of integrity in every single phase of the human race is really shocking, and will be the undoing of it. Well, I mean, we are a failed and doomed society anyway. But you as an individual can usurp that and can make your own way in life, and that's what it's all about. But you're not going to get it from the frauds out there that want to sell you junk, who claim that it's computerized. Yeah, it's a box of garbage that they're going to sell you for $8,000 or more as the junk machinery, such as the stuff that the SE5 put out, or anything that you're going to get from Renetti, who has written endless volumes of garbage, which is misinformation. And as I said, this guy basically is committing criminal acts by saying that he can cure you using radionics when he is sick himself and can't cure himself. This is then perpetrated by the U.S. Psychotronic Association, who put him on and allowed him to make these criminal statements. This is the industry. Know it. Now, who has credibility? Well, I mean, I'm the only person out there doing any serious research in the scalarionics or radionics field. And I've been doing that now for 35 to 40 years. I was the first person ever to have, for 3 years, a radionic store in Palm Springs, California, which had instruments there. I've written over 35 books, 5 courses. I've lectured. I've been on the BBC, CNN, other things. I've done a lot of stuff. And of course, I'm pushing 70, and a lot of this stuff was done 20, 30 years ago. But that doesn't in any way discount the fact that I did all this stuff and is the only person on this planet ever to have a radionic store and facilities, and I taught courses. And of course, I will be republishing my original book on this, which I co-wrote with the fantastic Robert Blanchard, who is a guy who has translated all the great ancient books and who has written books on this area as well. So that book, while all of his books are generally in print, I will be releasing the ones that are on psychotronics, because that's the term I used initially because it makes sense. These are psychic electric devices, or another term is consciousness machines that I like to use because they work on consciousness and then are amplified through transmutated electronics. Now, all of this would probably be better if it was in print so you could read it and reread it in a well-described but simple and short form so people would understand it. Now, again, Bengston has written The Energy Cure, which you can get anywhere. I think it's on Kindle, but you can buy this book for under $9 used on Amazon or ABE Books. Which is another place you can probably look for it on eBay, etc., and buy it as cheap as you can, but you need to buy this. There's also a course on CDs, 6 different CDs, that he talks about his entire system and gives you his special method, which is a type of visualization, which I've talked about, and you can look up these things on this channel. And I've talked about his type of unique visualization that he calls cycling. And he does visualization in an unusual way at a high speed. He has done this for years and years and claims amazing results. Now, again, he claims to have cured people from cancer and goes ahead and states it. And he has the names of these people who had been diagnosed and who now have been shown to be cured. And other people that didn't use his service, that were friends of these people that also had cancer, and they died. And so this is some pretty shocking stuff, and he's been doing this for long periods of time. As I said, it's about 30 years. And as I said, if you want to get his information and so forth, make sure you get it now. This is a person who is old, and God knows how long they're going to be around, just like myself. Who knows how long this information will be available. So if you want technology, books, machines, etc., I would make that investment now. Life is precarious, and there are many forces out to get anybody who does anything that is empowered. Fortunately, Bengston doesn't seem to have been harassed, and there's lots of free information on his website. There's lots of new information talking about the research he's done, which is quite fascinating. As I said, he gives you his unique cycling visualization. And he also has a few little gems, like I've mentioned. Apparently, pure cotton gauze holds huge amounts of energy. So this is something to look into. And again, just further proof that this is non-electromagnetic. You're certainly not conducting electrical energy through gauze or cotton. As so many of these things are. We have to quite understand that. It's amusing that people use plastic through electromagnetic processes when plastic is an insulator. That's why it's around electrical wires, and why you can grab an electrical wire that you plug into the wall, because it has plastic around the actual live wire, because it's an insulator. So, I mean, people don't even have, now this ain't brain surgery, people, and I don't have an electrical background per se. I know the basics, but I don't necessarily need to learn electronics. It's not electrical. But you'll get idiots, particularly people that are involved in computers and computer science, that want to tell you differently. And of course, even have particular types of chips and other things in their machines like the SE5, which is full of processors. I don't have that right in front of me, but I'll show that in some time. We do take the SE5 entirely apart, and you can, if you're a member of All Access, you can actually see that, as well as many other radionic machines, which I have completely disassembled, and show you what's inside. This is very important if you're a researcher. So I've spent thousands of dollars getting different products and then taking them apart. What is in them? And what is in all radionic products is nothing unless they've made it into some garbage box of electronic nonsense. Because there isn't electronic chips that pick up consciousness. Frankly, science doesn't even know what consciousness is, and certainly cannot pick up non-electromagnetic energies, which is why they label this. And there's even some scientific people that state that if it's not electromagnetic, it doesn't exist. This is the kind of stooges you run into in common science. So we need to understand it. So what has actually happened here, and what's the fascinating aspect? So, I mean, Bengston has pretty much documented this stuff for many, many years and continues to do it. And as I said, you can get a lot of free information on his website, healing methods, and he goes into all this kind of stuff. Here he is at work here. That's actually him doing this type of work. And he takes anybody and trains them in his system. He also offers workshops literally around the world. So no matter where you live, well, I don't know if you can say that. He does occasionally do it in Europe. But there are workshops, and you can go to these for a fee, of course, and you can learn his method, which, again, doesn't take any kind of skill at all. There's publications. Now, again, here is his Energy Cure book. Here's his DVDs or CD set, is available in English. And it looks like this, and I have these, and those people who are in my particular circle, I will be making this available because these can be expensive and difficult to get. Now, the Energy book, the Energy Cure book, you can get right on the Amazon and hunt it up in many places. Maybe you can get a deal with it. Apparently, it's in German, it's in Spanish, and in Dutch. He does seem to work with the Dutch. Apparently, it was in Romanian for a while, as it says, is now out of print for some unknown reason. It is interesting that it has got this, because he's done a lot of research, he's been around, and he has done seminars in these areas. He does work with some bad people, and that's some of the drawbacks here, and I will get into that in a minute. But those are the publications, and you can see, maybe I can get a little, that's what the front of the book looks like, the Energy Cure, Hands-on Healing, which is what he calls this, a training course in the Energy Cure. So, I mean, the problem with all alternative science and even non-alternative science, whatever it may be, is the lack of research and the lack of training. Now, he hasn't written a whole bunch of books, and I kind of like that. Why write a whole bunch of books on the same subject matter when you should have explained it properly the first time? Since it's a one type of method, and it's a one type of technique. Well, he's done that, and then he's explained it in greater detail. And I do like that as well, because I like to do the same thing, is you write a book and then you explain it more in like a lecture series. So, it's one home run after another with this guy. So it's very good. And as he said, there are multi-languages there if you're interested in it. And he does offer courses. So go to his website and find out if there's one in your area. And I believe he has them around the country. He's had them in Europe. I know he's had them a few times in Germany and England. And he does seem to have Dutch connections. So the Nederlanders he seems to have it. Now, I don't know how much connections he has in Spain and Spanish, but you can look into that if that's your language. It's always best to learn in your own language to a degree, but depending on how good the teachers are. But this is certainly a system, and you can find out for yourself that has been tested, retested, and used for many years. This is pretty rare. And there's very few people that have any documentation. I deal with a lot of people and they have zero documentation that their system works. Now, I've been in this area for many, many years in the metaphysical area, and I have hundreds of testimonials, if not thousands, of people who have been successful using these things for success, for protection, for all the kind of metaphysical things, reaching higher states of consciousness, etc. I've never really got into the actual healing area very much. So you need to understand that when you're reading. But, if somebody's going to make claims, particularly with healing, like people who perpetrate dangerous frauds like the Psychotronic Association and Peter Renetti, that go out and actually state this, and I have this recorded of him making ridiculous statements on the program that the Psychotronic Association puts out. And virtually nobody in the Psychotronic Association, and I've had some of my teachers many, many years ago, and they refused ever. I was a member even for a short period of time. They never contacted the only guy on the planet to ever have a radionics store, on the fact of that the entire organization is really very bad, and the fact that they make illegal, dangerous statements, and that Peter Renetti is directly connected or with people like Charles Casamano, who writes articles for the Anton LaVey of modern times, is pretty shocking. Otherwise known as E.A. Kinetic. And the large satanic group of people that are into radionics. So these are the kind of people you're dealing with. So, but you have to know that. I'm the only credible person in the scalar onyx or the scalar radionic area. And I'm the only person who has done any kind of serious research into radionics, period. Nobody else has done it, unless we're going to go back to Ruth Drown, who did some. But again, we have problems with Ruth Drown, who failed every test that she was put through, as did Albert Abrams, which is another two big mysteries that we don't really understand what happens to them. And of course, because of the illegality of using radionics for healing and their horrible failures, we are stuck with this reality that is out there. Abrams was tested, or his associate was, and failed horribly. And this has been documented. In 1950, was it? 51, Drown was tested at, Chicago University, and failed horribly. 10 years, or was that, 1951, I believe. 10 years later, she was tested again in the Los Angeles area where she was practicing as a chiropractor, and failed horribly. What are we to make of these things? So while these are fascinating areas of research, there has been nobody, and she was doing medical practices. She should have verified it, as all the people are doing today. People like Peter Renetti, who likes to come out and make illegal statements. Where's your proof? Sitting there with a giant bulbous head from Hashimoto's thyroid disease, and then saying that all the rates work for all the machines, and this is just proven, when he can't even cure himself. I mean, what kind of nonsense is this? So we have to understand that, and understand that this goes for everything. It's not just this area. You can't believe anybody with what they tell you. And secondly, you've got to understand, and being in the real world, you are being conned by people that want to sell you stuff. And, ultimately, you're the stooge, because of the fact you really think there's an instant machine that's like a magic lamp that will cure you. Do you really think that's available and ready out there for a few hundred, even a few $1,000s? Do you understand the power that would have if that was really true? The great organite, which is actually poison that was brought to the public by a Satanist, Karl Hans Weltz, who has a long history of being a Satanist. And then, so the whole idea is that you don't know any of this, and nobody looks up people to find out what they're into. And while he hid it somewhat, it certainly was on his page when he was functioning. Of course, he's dead now and died young because organite was so healing and wonderful. And his wife died even younger than him. So that's the power of organite, which couldn't be more negative of an energy. Now, orgone with Wilhelm Reich is very interesting and needs to be researched further. And we don't know how effective it was or not, but certainly this was a serious researcher who apparently was able to prove things like make it rain. And I'm not sure what his medical history was, but again, he was persecuted, so we never really know. And when he was going to get out of jail, he mysteriously died. Which is convenient yet again. So these are all the things we have to look into, and these are all shrouded in mystery because of the kind of corrupt nonsense we have going on in this entire world and everything. And the public helps support the worst of the worst as they continue to do with all the Satanists that are making all these radionic type machines. So it is really pretty sad. But life is like that, and you have to, again, buyer beware. But if you think there's a genie lamp out there that's going to pop something up in front of you, going to heal you, make you $1 million, etc., well, that's so stupid it doesn't really even worth spending too much breath on. These things, as my tools are, they assist you in life. They empower you. They create positive energy fields around you of a certain type that you program into that will attract the same. Meaning, if you want or need financial help, well, you create financial fields around you that will then draw those energies to you that is best for you. You're not going to win the lottery. You're not going to open your door and find a pot of gold outside. It's not how it works. And there's none of these machines, and there's virtually nothing out there, period, whether it's some sort of medication or herbals or anything else that will heal you. They all assist to a degree, and they all work different for everybody because you are different than everyone else. Your reality to draw money is different than someone else's. Your physical well-being is different than someone else. So you have to understand that. So if somebody's making outrageous claims, you have to make sure that you have proof of that, and none of them have that. They're very typical, like Renetti, who's sitting there as sick as a dog, stating how his stuff works for everything and everybody's getting results and the entire world is healthy and doing wonderful. What kind of nonsense is this? Supported by an organization that is so unprofessional and so low class that they allow that to happen. It has nobody on it. Remember, the Psychotronic Association is ran by a high school gym teacher, plain and simple, who has never done anything for the industry and who took it over from his father, who was basically, from all the people that have told me about him and have met him, and some of my teachers in the past did, that this guy was a very foul individual. So moving past that, we have to get back into the Bengston method. Now, the kicker with the Bengston method, and we'll move into that, and as I said, there's workshops that he gives, and I believe these are relative. Let's see if I can find a particular, and we're going into the new year here. There's one coming up in February. January? I'm trying to look for an actual cost here. If I remember correctly, it wasn't that expensive. It was a few $100s. But as I said, you can't really find anything out there that is proven and that has a whole bunch of research reports behind it. All of your shamans, all of your hunas, kunas, your featherhead Indians that all say they can cure everybody, well, they're very hit and miss if they work at all. And so the whole idea is we have to keep this in mind, that this is one of the few methods that